Welcome to Cricket with Empire show, sir. Today, along with me, I have my friends Manoj and Nishant, sir.
Thanks, Rohit. Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be a part of this show and looking forward to some nice conversation with you guys. Thank you.
So here is my first question, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Umpiring is like staying in lockdown for the whole match. So how do you deal with your emotional quotient?
Well, first of all, I think in the last about 47, 48 days, I've been interacting with a lot of people in the cricketing circle, people who follow the game, media people, my fellow umpires. But I think this is the first time around I'm listening to somebody equating umpiring to a lockdown state. It's a very interesting thing. Yes, see, cricket is played in three different formats today. We have the longer version, which is 3 day, 4 day, and 5 day games, wherein the patience and skills of cricketers as well as umpires are different. And then we have the shorter version of a 50-over format, which is a 1 day game. And then we have the T20, which is the shortest format, which provides you with a lot of entertainment and everything under the roof is available for you in one shot. Yes, patience is the key to umpiring because you are a judge in a game because you're adjudicating decisions. You're trying to make the right decisions most of the time. And it's really I wouldn't say a tough job because driven by passion we pursue this. Any job, the job you people are involved in today also is a tough one, but nevertheless it's the passion that drives us. And I always believe that an umpire gets the best seat in the stadium to watch a cricket match and watch the game he loves the most. Yes, coming to equating this to the lockdown, I think this lockdown period would make most of the human beings realize that they are trying to reinvent the wheel now rather than just trying to fit the spoke into the wheel. So we have seen a lot of things that have uh, gone by, and there's a sea change in the quality of life, the way we've changed ourselves. So I think patience is one thing we've certainly learned to live with. So we have stayed focused to what we can do best at home, try to adhere to norms which has been put down by the people to follow the certain guidelines. So I think this would be very, very useful for us taking it forward as and when life returns to near normalcy. And we are all waiting for all walks of life to get back to normalcy. And me being a former cricketer and a current umpire, I'm just waiting for the grounds to open and the stadia to open and to start cricket matches. Yes, this period has taught a lot of good things for us, whereas even previously also we did follow a lot of tight regiments that put us in place there. But this sort of 50-day period wherein we've been done away with most of the things from the outside world, barring connecting with people thanks to the digital world today via various medium. So that is something that's done wonders. So touchwood, we have been fresh interacting with a lot of youngsters like you across different platforms that has brought in many more new ideas and dimensions to sport and to umpiring as such. Hopefully, this will help us stand in good stead when the doors are open for sport as such.
Here's my next question. The part of development is learning from our mistakes. How much did it hurt when you got your decisions wrong? And sir, did it affect you for the rest of the match?
Very interesting one. I think in all walks of life, I think starting right when we get into school in the pre-KG or Montessori, whatever we call, we all make mistakes. We learn from that. I think the saying just doesn't stop there saying mistakes are the stepping stones for success. Yes, we all make mistakes. I have made mistakes, I would say. And the last mistake I made was not the last one, I would say. Once again, when I get onto the cricket field, there certainly will be mistakes made in the future also. But how you reflect upon that, take it in the positive way, try to overcome what you have done. For example, if I've been consistently giving a batsman out on inside edges, say LBW, or missing caught behinds on a regular basis, then fundamentally I'm missing something which I'm not supposed to do as an umpire. So we've got footage of the videos, we get to see where we've gone wrong. As you say, mistakes, yes, but acceptance is the key word first. We need to accept, put up our hand first and say, yes, here is the day, or here is a game where I've made a couple of mistakes. And if possible, speak to the concerned player, tell him that I'm sorry, son, this is what transpired. It was just one of those days where I just lost the focus for a couple of moments and I gave you out in a wrong fashion. I hope I don't repeat the same thing over and time again. Yes, we go back. We've got a match referee who handles the team as such, wherein he gives us inputs and feedback after the game. So yes, we do feel bad, especially there are cameras which cover all these games, and the player, once he is out, immediately gets back and has an opportunity to watch his own dismissal, and he comes back and says, when I get to meet him on the field of play, I think, ump, you gave me a raw deal. Yes, the first thing I have done as a person, my technique has been, yes, because if I have seen it, I would tell him, yes, I'm sorry about it. That's just that it happened, and let's hope it doesn't happen again. And later on, yes, as I said, try and find out what were the reasons that got to falter at that particular point in time. So I just go through that, and yes, it's like, you've seen that, or you've heard from the referee, or a player comes and tells you, and you realize. And most of the umpires at any level, when they make a wrong decision, immediately in a split second they come to realize, not just by the reaction of the player, but there is an iota of doubt saying, I think I have stuffed this up. I think I realize that I shouldn't have given him out, but it has happened. So have a quick chat with your partner, try to overcome this. Obviously your partner will be in a position to help you and tell you that, yes, it could be, it could not be, things didn't go our way, I think we need to move on. As I say, management theory is very easy, saying that we get the monkey off the back, we move forward, get back the routines into perspective, and start moving forward. But yes, it depends on the profile of the game, the sort of players you're involved with. It's really a tough one, but each individual would have his own technique to overcome this. I always have believed, first thing is I put up my hand and said, yes, I'm sorry, I've got it wrong. Let me focus on the next ball and ensure that I don't repeat the same mistake, maybe today, in the next session, or the rest of the day.
Here's my next question, sir. Being played along with Rahul Dravid sir and Anil Kumble sir in the Ranji tournament, what made you choose umpiring as your career, sir?
Well, the last thing on my on the mind was to become a cricket umpire. To be honest, post hanging up my boots as a cricketer, and I was lucky enough to have brush shoulders with all the legends of the game, like you mentioned now, Rahul, Anil Kumble, Javagal Srinath, Sunil Joshi, not to name a few more. I mean, that was a path which I treaded, and I relished the most, I would say. Post that, I donned several hats. I don't know. It was whether I was successful in each of them. I gave my best shot, rather, I would say. I didn't want to, put people in a spot or disappoint myself in whatever assignment I took up. So post that, the immediate thing that came to my mind was cricket coaching. So I donned the hat of a coach and was coaching in a private academy in Chennai for close to a decade. And then I was involved with different junior level state teams in the Tamil Nadu Cricket Association. I was part of the Tamil Nadu Cricket Academy for some time. Then I moved on from there, and I got into the role of an administrator. I was a selector in various age groups, as well as the senior state team in Tamil Nadu. Then one fine day, suddenly this came up, and one of the elite panel umpires from India, S. Ravi, he told me, Sri, there is an umpiring exam coming up. You've been bugging the umpires enough when you played during your days. I think it's your turn to wear the hat of an umpire and become an umpire. So I said, Ravi, it's just next to impossible. It's such a boring job, I told him. 4 days you stand out there, and on a couple of days when I have played, I've seen there is not a single appeal. The umpire doesn't need to adjudicate. I said, how the hell can I stand for 4 days and watch this sort of cricket? I said, no, it's not on. So it was, we had a couple of chats, and the screening test and everything happened. And touchwood, 2008, when all this happened, I became an umpire with the BCCI. To be honest, the first couple of years didn't really enthuse me at all to take up this job seriously. I still wanted to fall back into coaching and do a lot of other things with cricket as such. Maybe now I reflect upon the last 10 years has been a lovely journey, I would say. I've learned a lot. I've scaled quite a few peaks. There is still a lot more to achieve and a lot more to learn. It's been a wonderful journey so far, I would say. Though it was the last priority on my mind to become an umpire, I think this is the role I've been cherishing the most.
So here is the next question. What is the most weirdest thing that has happened to you when you are on the field, and elucidate what exactly had happened that day?
Well, as umpires, as I told you in your first question, that we are a party to things that happen at the closest vicinity. 22 yards across, we see what happens on the field of play. whatever banter happens, whatever chatter, many a time in non-live games, most of the games, you don't have stump cameras which pick up the conversation between players, or at times suddenly a player might turn up and tell an umpire that I think you've got up on the wrong side of the bit today. You just are not, answering anything in the affirmative when I'm bowling. So a lot of times we just go through this. I think I would say we've had a lot of sledging on the field. We've had a lot of choice of words used, wherein people have come close to physical contact, but it's just not gone to such an extent wherein the umpires have to really intervene and say that now let's put a stop to it, pull him up to the umpire's room at the end of the day and tell him that we are handing out a check to you saying you're being fined 100% of your match fees, or this is how it goes on. Well, one incident, if I could recall, I think whole of the world who follows cricket and umpiring would know. It was in one of the IPL games where Kieron Pollard and Mitchell Starc were involved, and it came close to physical battle. And that was a night wherein it was a tough game. Two high-profile teams, Mumbai Indians and the Royal Challengers Bangalore, were locking arms in the iconic Wankhede Stadium. People who watched the game or heard about the stadium can tell you, rest assured, it's just deafening there. You just can't listen to anything anybody says on a cricket field. The noise is so loud. And you had the likes of Virat Kohli, the De Villiers, Rohit Sharma, the high-profile players involved. And when this incident happened, and me and my partner Ravi that night, with whatever best we could do at that point in time, did manage to tie and get both the players off and ensure the scuffle didn't last long. But that night was just not the night. It went way too long, and it went early in the morning. We had a hearing, we had a code, and we had to charge both the players. And it was a Herculean task to address players of such high profile. And there was a lot written, a lot spoken about by the former greats and the current players in the game, the media, the commentators. They said this situation, could it have been handled in a different way? Did the umpires do the job to the best of their ability? I think this has been one of the incidents that's always maintained the top-notch spot, because this always figures upon the top 10 fights in cricket. So I would say, being a party to it firsthand, I sit back today and say, because of the experience I've gained post that incident that happened, I think it was in 2014, if I can recall. So 6 years later now, I can sit back and say, if something of that sort is going to come up or happens, I think I'm better placed and I'm in a better position to handle such things. I think that was one of those incidents that can never get off my mind.
Sir, here's my next question.
Yeah.
What are some of the difficulties that umpire face on and off the field, sir?
Well, to be honest, umpiring per se is a very challenging job. When I say challenging, why, I can relate it with cricket as such. Many of you would have heard commentators or former cricketers speak saying that the job of a wicketkeeper is very tough. The job of a fast bowler is very tough. For a batsman to bat on these conditions are very tough. Anything in life is tough. Without any challenges in life, I believe that whatever job you do, whatever you are paid for, is not worth its salt. That's how I've been brought up. That's what I believe. Because I was a banker for 24 years and I quit at a very early age, citing reasons saying there was no challenge in the sort of job I was doing. I was doing something that was monotonous. I was a slave to a system that was there right in front of me. I could not innovate. I could not invent. I could not think out of the box to try and do something different. So, yes, the challenge in umpiring lies. It's a varied job, because you travel to different places. You're umpiring different teams. You're looking at different formats. The foremost thing is the challenge of travel. Say, I'm from Bangalore. I stay in the southern part of the country. So if I have to do a game in Dharamshala in the month of December, which is going to be a degree minus, so I need to gear up first for the challenge of carrying clothing with me, get that into my mind, saying I'm traveling to a country, for me, I mean, a place of the country which is like Switzerland for me. The first challenge is to overcome the weather there. It's not something easy for us to do that. So the physical challenges, the weather, food, the people, the surroundings there, though you are a mehman only for a week's time there, it's a very short time for you to get acclimatized to a particular place. And next comes the format of the game. It's a one-day game. You say, okay, I'm just there for 100 overs. So it's about 7.5 hours I need to spend on the field of play and walk off. A T20 game is a much shorter version, but mentally and physically you're more tired because action is happening rapidly. You're just not out of the game at any point in time, given it's just a 240 ball game. A 4-day or a 5-day or a 3-day game has different challenges because it's a elongated game. You stay on the field for 7 hours, 7 hours, 7 hours over a period of 4 days. There comes your ability to withstand the sort of physical endure, your mental ability, your different set skills you put, because many a times in a longer version, the umpires have a mentality to just get away from the game because nothing interesting is happening. There is a partnership going on. The team is just playing with the field spread. There are no appeals. Suddenly, before the close of the play, there is one appeal, and you negate it or give it out. And unfortunately, for your bad luck, that turns out to be a wrong decision. That could be a turning point in the game. So, putting your mental strength, when do you switch off? When do you switch on? So, how do you focus differently for a game that is a duration that is short and shortest format? And yes, of course, trying to stay away from the media glare because there is social media. There are youngsters like you who follow all sorts of social platforms. There is Twitter, there is Insta, there is your Facebook, there are WhatsApp. Anything that you do wrong spreads like wildfire. But if, say, for example, Rohit has made a good decision, that never comes into the mind of any player or any media person. The glare always is about when you get a decision wrong. So to stay away from all these things, to focus on the job, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a judge. So whenever I walk out on a cricket field, it's about getting all my decisions right. That is what people expect, and that is what I'm supposed to do. So end of the day, yes, there are many more challenges adding to this, but these are the basic things umpires face, and I think they relish most of them. That's why they're there in that job.
What are your views on the recent man-cutting incident by Ravichandran Ashwin, sir? Do you consider it as ethical, sir?
See, Rohit, cricket is always called a gentleman's game. Basically, why is there is no contact in this game? Because there is no physical contact, they always believed that cricket was a gentleman's game. I would always say was a gentleman's game. So, because if you people know somebody by the name of G.R. Vishwanath, one of the legendary batsmen of India, he used to nick a ball. Even the umpire gave him not out. He used to walk. He believed that he was out and he used to go. In the recent past, I would recollect somebody like Adam Gilchrist, a modern day giant in international cricket. He was one who used to nick and walk. So people today are entitled for a place. There is a lot of stakes in the game for the players per se. IPL has come in. There are a lot of other leagues happening around the world. There is a lot of stakes for the player. So you can't expect a player to be so honest saying, I've nicked the ball, I'm walking, even if the umpire doesn't give me out. What happens when an umpire gets it wrong? The player is obviously upset with what he has done. Now coming to Ashwin's mankading, yes, fortunately, unfortunately, I was a part of that game. I was one of the match officials there, and the hell broke loose once the game was over. To put it in a nutshell, I am not here to comment on anything that is ethical or non-ethical. There is a law in the game which permits the bowler to run out the non-striker if he is out of the crease. The law says before the bowler can come into he comes into the delivery stride and gets into the bowling position. His arm comes into a position of release. Before that, at any point in time, if he finds the non-striker out of the crease, he can just knock off the stumps at the non-striker end. On appeal, the batsman is liable to be given out. So I believe on that particular day, Ashwin just followed what the law said. And yes, that was it. But the whole world, the social media, the cricketing buffs, including the MCC and the ICC, hell broke loose and said, like you people are now saying, was it ethical or not? I don't want to get into that sort of a thing. And it was law. He went by the law. So cricket is governed, one by the MCC laws of cricket, and ICC has laid down the playing conditions as such. So well within both, he was there within his purview. So people thought, why did he warn Butler once or whatever? I don't think anything of a warning is required at a level wherein you're playing a game on an international pedestal. Butler is a seasoned cricketer, is playing international cricket for a long time, and Ashwin has seen this game for more than a decade. So I think both of them are aware of what they were doing. So that was it. That's what I would like to answer this question in such a way, because it is a bit tricky, and it could take different dimensions and go out of proportions and become a little bit controversial. So within the law of the game, it was very much permissible, and what he did was very much within the law.
So here in the last question. What would you suggest to the younger generation who want to establish themselves as an umpire?
Look, umpiring maybe 2 decades ago or a decade ago, like I have become an umpire in the last about 13, 14 years. So maybe 2 decades ago, umpiring was not a fascinating job for anybody as such, per se, in terms of visibility nor remuneration wise. So now, as the game has grown leaps and bounds, and there is so much of monetary benefits that have come in fact, today a BCCI qualified umpire can look at the umpiring as a professional job, like a software professional, like an architect, like a banker, at a very young age. If he decides to look into umpiring and pursue that passion, certainly he can look at it as a profession. So there are various steps involved in this. First, the particular person needs to go through the screening exam in his own state. It could be Tamil Nadu, Mumbai, Delhi, Karnataka, whichever state in India. He has to become a state panel umpire first, go through the rigors of umpiring in various levels of matches there. Then every year or every 2 years and once, BCCI has a umpire's exam, which is a level 1 exam wherein these state panel umpires through screening can appear for those level 1 exams. People who pass through that exam can get on to the level 2. So level 2 is a place wherein you get chunk of umpires, maybe 50, 60, 70, 100 umpires from across India into one forum, where there is a workshop and an exam held for them. So people who pass out of the exam with flying colors become a part of the BCCI fold. Then the rest is their choice. They do well at the BCCI level. The pinnacle for them to hit is the ICC Elite Panel of Umpires. So this is the flow chart or the pyramid for umpires at various levels to progress to. The only suggestion I would give is pursue umpiring as a passion, because if there is no passion involved, that no commitment or dedication, or you just say, it's time pass for me this Sunday, somebody's called me saying that I'll get 750 rupees to umpire a school match, I just want to go there. No, that's not on. Because it's serious profession, you are playing around with the careers of many youngsters. You don't realize one wrong decision just because you're not interested can put down the career of a cricketer good time. So pursue your passion, dream big always. One fine day, if you feel that you're walking onto a cricket field and say, no, I'm not enjoying what I've done, I think that should be the last day somebody umpires. But as far as youngsters are concerned, this is a fantastic profession. Why is it's not only remunerative, you can get into limelight. There are so many tournaments that go live today. People can watch you, you're visible, and this can get you to places. Like you travel the traverse of the country, you get to meet different people, you get to see different culture, and touch wood, if you become a top flight umpire, you can watch all your favorite players across in close quarters. There is nothing better than that in life.
So here's the last question.
Yes.
Who were some of the players you found difficult to handle on the field, sir? And how do you deal with them in the pitch? So,
well, all cricketers basically are tough to handle. I wouldn't say that, X or Y is a guy who's the easiest or toughest to handle. Well, basically what happens is there is preparation done before we get into games. As I mentioned earlier, number one is on the format wise. Number two, based on that, we identify teams, and there are players who could be potential troublemakers in the game. So having been around for the last 12, 13 years, I've umpired all the top teams in India, which includes Karnataka, Delhi, Bombay, Uttar Pradesh, Bengal. Each of these top sides will have their own marquee players, and they also judge and evaluate umpires over a period of time. When I went in and walked into a Delhi Railway game, they were just looking at me and, they said, who is this guy? Where does he come from? So casually they asked me, is this your first year in umpiring? So I had to answer them, yes. So once they started seeing me perform and do well in my own duties, I started gaining that reputation over a period of time. So once you earn that reputation and the respect of the players, it makes half the job easier for you. So that is one part of it. So I'm not very keen to name any players as such because it could leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth when they look upon to. But I can certainly tell you some very street smart cricketers who can handle players really well. On the top of the list, I would put up is Parthiv Patel of Gujarat, the young diminutive wicketkeeper who played for India. He is a very, very street smart cricketer. He knows each and everything that governs the laws and the playing condition within the game. And he can be a real headache, and he can give a horrific time to the umpires if they get something wrong. But otherwise, as I told you, any high-profile player in any team for that matter, it could be Abhinav Mukund, it could be a Dinesh Karthik, it could be say Mayank Agarwal or a Manish Pandey here, all these high-profile players, when they come on the cricket field, they represent their own states or franchises or their respective zones. They come out and they want to give their best, and they expect the umpires to do their best also. So as I told you, it wouldn't be players who give you trouble, but they are the ones you need to look out for because they are the smartest ones on a cricket field. So that's how you would look to handle them. Give the devil its due. If he's a high-profile player, give him the due. Handle him in a nice way. And the key part is preparation. So ensure you're prepared well to see what sort of players you need to handle in that particular team during that particular tournament or match.
With your permission, we would like to have a few rapid-fire questions, sir.
Yeah, please.
Can we proceed, sir?
Yeah, please.
So here is my first question, sir.
Yeah.
What are your views on Rohit Sharma's career?
I think, to me personally, he's one of the best white ball cricketers I have ever seen, and I feel that today he's the best white ball player in the world. Be it 50 over or 20 over cricket, it's been a fascinating career for him, and he started blossoming better with the confidence he's gotten as a test match player also. Hope he does well in the longer format. And to me, he is the best white ball cricketer. That's what I feel.
So, one
Thank
word
you.
about Virat Kohli's career.
I think he's God's gift to world cricket, I would say, just not Indian cricket. I don't think we all thought that there would be no second Sachin in the world. But I don't know, because he's a contemporary. He's played cricket during our era. I think he's God's gift to world cricket, just not Indian cricket.
Sir, what are your views on Dhoni's retirement and his career, sir?
I think Dhoni has been one of the topmost performers in world cricket. His achievements are second to none. He's won the T20 World Cup, the 50 over World Cup. During his tenure, India became the number one team in the test match side. Being a sportsman myself, nobody came up to me and told me, Srinath, this is the time for you to go, or when is it that you are going? So I think I'm nobody to comment on when Dhoni needs to go. I think he's been one of the top class performers in world cricket. It's left to him. He has to decide when he wants to go, and he knows better than anybody in this world.
What is the best innings you have witnessed being on a field as an umpire?
There have been many instances. Just to pick something like that would be a pretty difficult call. I've seen some wonderful hundreds. Wasim Jafar has made for Mumbai. Gautam Gambhir turning out for Delhi in the Ranji Trophy. A few innings from AB de Villiers in the IPL. But immediately, what comes to me, what stands out could be 100 which Wasim Jafar made against Vidarbha in Mumbai on a seaming track when Mumbai were hardly 3 or 4 down for nothing. And he was down with a sore throat, and he went on to make 130 odd runs. I think the quality of batsmanship and the determination he showed on that day, so he was not playing against a top-notch side. I'm talking about maybe 7-8 years back. That really stands out and comes to my mind. There have been many innings, but suddenly at this point in time, I'm not able to recollect. But I think this I would put one of the top ones. Yeah.
Here is my final question, sir.
Yes, please.
How high you rate players like Sachin, sir, who are with utmost honesty during the match?
Well, I think most of the cricketers who played at the topmost level and who've donned the Indian colors for so long, it's not only Sachin. In fact, I've been privileged to umpire quite a few of his games. And I can say he's a gentleman to the core. The way he treats his fellow players, his opposition, as well as the match officials, it's fantastic. And you want to name others like Anil Kumble or Javagal Srinath or our own Rahul Dravid. I think they knew how to carry themselves. They knew how to play the game hard because they were brand ambassadors. They were watched by millions of people, not only in India, across the world also. So today, when cricket, the sport is discussed, why is it always we contemporary youngsters like you talk about Sachin, Rahul, or a Saurav Ganguly, or a Srinath, or a Lakshman? Why is because the way they played the game, it's not only about the numbers and achievements they had against them. It's also the way they presented themselves on and off the field. I mean, I've been really privileged. I've umpired quite a few of these players, and I've been fortunate enough to have played with most of them and against them also. It's been an honor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having your wonderful time with us, sir. And I hope you have a good day.
Thank you very much, Rohit. Thank all your friends for having come up with some very tricky questions. It was a pleasure and honor to be on the show. And I wish you boys all the very best in your future endeavor. And let's hope this pandemic of Corona gets away at the earliest so that we can all get outdoors and start pursuing what we love in our life. So drive your passion, dream big, achieve whatever you want to achieve in life. So all that I can say is Stay safe and stay well. Let's all get over this at the earliest. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.